Hi, just a quick video to show you this little finishing technique for the side slit of this new pattern, the Kaftan era dress, if you do the long version, which I love. So I've just about finished the dress. I have overlocked the 4 side slits, I just overlocked up to there, and then I did the side seam with the pockets and kind of joined the overlocking. My overlocking is being a bit weird at the moment, so it doesn't look the best. And then press both of the side slit kind of facings back. You get that curve. But then to finish the bottom, what the instructions say is to fold the facing back on itself. So if that's folded like that, and you were going to top stitch it, you fold it like back on itself and stitch up your hem allowance, which I've said 3 centimeters, but obviously you can do whatever you want. So you measure up 3, and from the folded edge, you stitch in to the edge of the overlocking, and you do that on all 4 sides. So you've got 4 slits, and you do that on all 4 sides. So it's up the hem distance that you want, and in just to the edge of that. And then when you flip it out, you trim, first of all, you trim that excess bulk away. But I just wanted to show you. And then when you flip it out like that, that bulk's gone. But then you just get this really beautiful, neat finish at the bottom of the hem. And then obviously that gives you a guide for where your hem's going to be, and then you can top stitch. But that is the edge of the, once you push that out, that is the edge of the slit on that corner, rather than kind of like those weird hems coming down. So I was just showing that technique. And you can see here now that I've turned that over, pressed it all out, it's just a really nice corner for those slits. And then I'll top stitch from the outside, no, actually from the inside, all the way up there, and then along the bottom hem. The band on the sleeve with just a really soft gather is probably my least favorite part of doing a pattern, because usually I've done the sleeve at the end and it's just fiddly. So if you prefer not to do that with this pattern, you can just put a casing. You can forget about this band and you can just put a casing and just thread elastic through like a normal elasticized sleeve. But the band is nice, but again, a little bit fiddly. So I've stitched the band together here, folded under 0.8-ish. I just kind of do 0.8 as an insurance so that I make sure I catch it. I do a 1 centimeter seam allowance here, and then when I fold it under, I make sure that I've caught that seam in. Trim these threads, and I always start at the seam like that, fold it over to make sure I can't see the stitching, and then I always pin from the outside because that's the side that I'm going to stitch from. And then I'm kind of just feeling with my fingers that where I pin catches it, and it does, because I'm always going to stitch about 1 mil above that. So I just go around. I'd pressed this, but with all the pressing, it's hard to keep that half seam. Yeah, I just look from that side, hold it, flip it over, and I just make sure my pins are running in the way that I'm going to stitch as well. So they're easy to take out. I'm just looking there and flipping and pinning. So I pin in the ditch. I know a lot of people stitch in the ditch, but maybe again it's my lack of patience or skill or whatever it is, but I always just stitch just above it, and then I just make sure, then it's kind of is more of a top stitching, and it doesn't, if you don't get it the ditch, it looks not great. So that's why I do this. Again, just pinning in the pinning there, and just checking that I'm catching it on that side. I'm nearly done. But yes, if you prefer not to do this with the pattern, you can just put elastic in without the band, but the band does give a really beautiful finish, and it means that there's no tightness at all on your arm. So now that it's pinned, it's quite a small circle to work with, so you do have to be careful. You'll just put it under the machine like that, and then you can pull those pins out as you sew. The neckline on the Kaftan era blouse and dress is bound with like a bias binding. So in the instructions it says you can use pre-made if you wanted like a contrast, or you can make your own. A lot of you will know how to make bias binding, but if you don't, it's not that difficult. So I just lay the fabric out, find the selvage, and then I've got one of these quilting rulers which has a 45-degree angle. So I just line up the 45-degree and then I just cut like a long line there, and then I did 2 inches, and I don't know why, sometimes I switch in and out of inches, but about 5 centimeters across, so that I'm left with a strip that is cut on the bias. And that the bias, in case you're not sure, is if you're trying to go around a curve, it just means that it sits better. And then I'll use my bias binding making tool to run this through. But if you don't have the tool, then you can press it in half and then press that one into the center and that one into the center. It's a bit more fiddling. That's my machine. But if you've got one of the little tools for the bias binding maker, which I'll find, this one here, I just got a note on here to cut 2 inches of fabric. They're very reasonably priced. I think I found it on eBay or a sewing supply store. And there's heaps of tutorials on YouTube. I think I've done one on here as well. And then that kind of folds it and makes it as you press. If you don't have that and you don't want to use a pre-made one, like I say, you can press it in half and then press that side into there. A bit more fiddling about, but that's how you do a bias. And just in case you haven't used this before, so you put it right side up and just get the little end out. And you just want to make sure it's where you need it to be, and then you just press and just make sure that's straight, and just keep pressing, and you can see how it's folding the 2 edges into the center, and then you can fold that in half to make the bias to go around the neck, and you just keep pressing that. And then when you're done pressing all of it, then you just fold in half. So that's a 2-inch strip to give a nice binding for the neck, or 5 centimeters. So when you sew in the 1 centimeter, you've opened up the bias, sew in the 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around the neck. Depending on how long you made the strip, there's guidelines as to how long, but I always give myself a little bit extra. You need to trim this down to about 1 centimeter, and cutting it parallel to the end. And then you need to fold it under, and then you'll have that other bias edge, and then you fold it under again so that you get a beautiful neat edge at the end of that neck opening. So you've got it extended, you've cut it off, you've folded it under, it's all opened out, fold it under. I just like to kind of finger press that, and then you refold the bias that's going to be folded. Lots of folding, and then in half. So then that edge, similar to the cuff, is going to sit just under your stitching edge, and I will pin. So you're just making sure that everything's tucked away neatly, and then I always pin from the side that I'm going to stitch. I pin in the ditch and I'm checking that I'm catching, and that's probably over just a little bit too much, so just alter to make sure that it's not too much. Pin and check, and then I'll just do that all the way around and then do the same on the other side. So you've got this opening, you've got this excess, and you're going to trim it to about 1 centimetre. Open it out, fold it under, just give a little finger press, fold that edge down, and then catching the stitching at the bottom. Check that, check it's nice and neat, cut away any threads, and then from the top where you're going to be stitching, pin that one in, and just keep going all the way around until you've got a beautiful neck edge. Just a note on tags. I have Calm Apparel tags, but I know Katie and the Machine do a huge range of amazing tags, and this is where you can put those tags in, particularly if they're a style like this, so you don't have to stitch around the whole thing. You can put it into the neck binding like that, and then that tag will be incorporated in that seam, in that stitching seam.